I want us to look at Hebrews 11, verse 6 today. And we really can't look at Hebrews 11:6 without looking at 11:5. We're terrible about isolating Scripture, and then we miss some very important, very fundamental pieces to what we should take from it. So first of all, in 5 it says, "By faith Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death." And so first of all, it says Enoch did not experience death. So if he didn't experience death, what did he experience? Life. And that's the opposite of death. Okay. Now we can look at 6. "And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him." Now, if we don't understand the Scripture, surface level, it sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like we have something to do so that we can please the Lord. But if we actually look at what these words mean and dissect it, there's such beauty in this. And so instead of looking at it with, oh my gosh, I want to please the Lord, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? Let's make sure we understand this. If we understand it, it's beautiful. So, first of all, it's impossible, without faith, it's impossible to please God. Well, that means we've got to understand what faith is. So first of all, we need to understand faith is our persuasion that we've been persuaded of who God is, of who he says he is. Our faith is really his faithfulness. It's the reality that we are experiencing God. We're experiencing who he says he is. We're experiencing his promises. We are experiencing him as trustworthy and as faithful. And so it's not really something we need to do or muster up. It's simply something we need to accept, be willing to experience, because he is who he says he is. So, in that definition of faith, when we experience God for who he is so pleased. Now, even that word pleased we need to think about, because that might seem like I want God to be happy with me. If he's pleased with me, he's happy with me. However, pleased is really, that word really means that it's good. That when we are experiencing God for who he says he is, we're experiencing all of who he is, he says, that's so good. Think back to the very beginning. When he was creating the earth, it says, some translations will say, he looked at what he created and he was pleased. Other translations say, and he saw that it was good. And so we can use those interchangeably. So faith is experiencing God for who he is, as faithful, as trustworthy, as a keeper of promise. When we're experiencing that, he thinks that's so good. Now that's a different perspective on this scripture. So let's keep going in here. Because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Now again, if we don't understand that, that sounds like, I must do that. But let's think about this a little bit differently. If we're experiencing God, if we're experiencing his faithfulness, his trustworthiness, his promises, everything he says he is, then we can't help. We must believe. It's like you can't help but believe. It's not something you must do. It's simply a fruit of that experience. It's like it goes hand in hand. And that reward, so again, this word that translators have inserted reward, it's only used one time in scripture, right here. And it doesn't mean like, you've earned it. It actually means the opposite of that. It means something you're entitled to. We could actually replace it with inheritance. When you're experiencing God for who he is, you see your inheritance. So not a reward of you've earned it, but simply you're entitled to it. It belongs to you. In fact, that word means, listen to this, it actually means he owes you. Look it up. I'm not making this up. That's a very different way to look at this. Now, when it says here that he exists, now that seems like a pretty basic level. Oh yeah, I believe God exists. But that word does not define well what this scripture is saying. It means that you understand I am. You know, when he says I am, Moses said, well, who should I say sent me? And he says, I am sent you. That I am is so big. Because who is God? He's the I am. He's the creator. He's the counselor. He's the protector, the provider. All of those things. He is peace. He is salvation. And so when we are experiencing who he is as faithful, we can't help but see him as the I am and experience all those aspects of I am. And I think it's beautiful. So I'm all over the place here, but there's so much in this scripture. Anyone who comes to him. Now some translations will say draws near to him. But either way, let's really meditate on that. When we draw near to the I am presence that's within us, we can't help but experience the beauty and the inheritance of who he is and everything that it says we're entitled to. That's a big deal. It's a very big deal. I want to read this scripture in the Mirror translation because I believe that translation does such a beautiful job with this. So let's just end this vlog with reading it out of the Mirror. So again, this is Hebrews 11:6. And I'm going to read 5 as well. Enoch enjoyed God's favor by faith. In spite of Adam's fall, he proved that faith defeats death. Now, first of all, if you look at the whole Hebrews 11, it's kind of that faith hall of fame. It's talking about all the different people. If you keep going in 7, it talks about Noah and then Abraham. And before that, it talks about Abel. Now, first of all, this is big. Don't miss this. These people were experiencing the I am, experiencing the fullness of God pre-cross. You need to understand that. They knew God. They intimately knew him and experienced who he was pre-cross. Okay. Now, I'll keep going. Let's read 6. So Hebrews 11:6. There is no substitute reward for faith. Faith's return exceeds any other sense of achievement. Faith knows God is. That those who desire to respond to his invitation to draw near realize by faith that he is life's most perfect gift. And we even have to, I can't end. I said I was going to end. I can't end yet. Because it's very important for us to understand the end of 6, where it says, he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Don't forget what the word seek means. I don't want you to confuse that word with the game hide and seek. Because that word seek does not mean we've got to look for God. God is within us. God is present. He isn't hiding from us. He's always pursuing our hearts. That word seek actually means to dissect, to dig into, to intimately know, to look at piece by piece and investigate. So let's just paraphrase 6. Let's just paraphrase this. So we need to understand that when we know God, when we know him as trustworthy, as faithful, as a keeper of promise, then it's so good. He just summarizes that is what's good for you. That's his will for us. And then in that place, of drawing near to him, of experiencing the I am, we see and we experience our inheritance of everything he is. And that happens when we investigate who he is, when we dig into who he is, when we take apart piece by piece all the facets of God and experience that intimately and personally in our life. That's a beautiful verse. That's not a verse of works. That's a verse of experience. Be blessed today.